Kane is in the building.
What's up?
What's going on, guys? This is the College Football Playoff Degenerate's Delight podcast, hosted by me, Mike Flanagan, aka Flano, aka Flanny All-Star. You get the gist. We're here today to talk a little college football and not so much the playoff, but more the toilet bowls or the early season bowls, to put it more politically correct. But they are toilet bowls, if you think about it.
Toilet!
I have no problem with all these extra bowl games. I love it. I'm a big college football fan. I love watching 6-6, 7-5 teams battle it out for something, in those last few weeks of the college football season, just to try to get to bowl eligibility. I don't have a problem with 5-7 teams going. I do think it takes away a little bit of the competitiveness down towards the end of the season, but I have no problem with it. But anyway, we're here today to talk about 5 things that I think are mortal locks for this college football bowl season. And none of them have to do with the playoff or any really major bowl game. These bowl games all happen before Christmas. So for those of you who are willing to put some money down early, you're bored the week before Christmas, you want to make a little extra money to buy your girl a gift, take a listen. And if it doesn't work out for you, I apologize, but I think these are all mortal locks. Mortal lock number 1 on the podcast this afternoon is hammer the over and under in the Boca Raton Bowl between Memphis and Western Kentucky. These are 2 teams that play a ton of offense and absolutely no defense. Memphis, their last 3 games this season, I believe they put up at least 41 points in each of them. In their final game, they beat Houston. They knocked Houston off 48-44 on a last-second touchdown. This team is led by wideout Anthony Miller. The kid's got 11 touchdowns this season, 1,283 total yards. The kid's a beast. He's going to get a lot of targets. As for Memphis, Taywan Taylor is the number 2 receiver in the country right now as far as receiving yards go. That kid's also a beast. I don't care what the over-under is in this game. It could be at 65.5. It could be at like 72.5. It doesn't matter. This game is going to be like one of those 48-44 shootouts, maybe even more points. Every time Memphis goes to a bowl, they make it interesting. They either get in a fucking fight at the end of the game like they did against BYU. They're a grinder team. They play a lot of offense. They don't give a shit about defense. If you like a game with a lot of offensive, with a lot of points flying around, balls flying all over the yard, and touchdowns everywhere, you're going to want to take the over on this game. Don't even think about going near the under unless you're really, really, really in a hole, because that's the odds of the under happening are going to be in your favor. The odds for the over are not going to be in your favor, but it's easy money if you bet the over. If it's even with the over under, you take the over any day of the week. So that's what I have to say about that game. I think that game is just going to be a shootout. Take the over. Done. Mortal lock number 2 is the Foster Farms Bowl between Utah and Indiana. Utah is currently ranked number 19. They had a really up and down season. They had couple quality wins early in the season. They took down USC, actually. It's a pretty big win for them. But then, they really struggled down the stretch. They lost to Oregon at home, and given the state of Oregon's program right now, that's a really bad loss. If Utah had won that game, they could have stayed in contention for the Pac-12 South title. They really blew it in the second to last week of the season. But even with all that, I still think they are going to roll over Indiana. Not only because it's Utah to San Francisco is a lot easier of a trip than Indiana, but that's not really why I think they're going to have a easy time in this game. Indiana and head coach Kevin Wilson just recently parted ways because Wilson was involved in multiple allegations from former players saying that he mistreated them. I'm not really sure about the details. I'm not gonna say anything without knowing the exact extent of the accusations. But all I know is that had to do with player mistreatment. Obviously Indiana's program is not in a good state of mind right now. The players don't really know what the hell's going on. Their interim coach, from what I understand, doesn't really have a lot of control over the team. I You lose your coach a week before a bowl game. It's never a good thing, especially when it's to a really bad situation like your coach mistreating a former player. The players lose trust in the program and the coaching staff remaining there, or that remains there. I think that Utah, I don't care what the line is in this game, they're going to score a lot of points with their rushing attack. Indiana's been able to, they've been able to hang in there with the big boys in the Big Ten, like Michigan earlier this season. They did a good job of shutting down Davion Smith when they went to the Big House. They held Michigan to only 20 points, but that was back when they had a head coach and they had an offensive game plan and a defensive game plan. I don't think that they even come close to being able to stop Utah in this game. I think Joe Williams, who's a bruiser, has a big day for Utah. I think he scores at least 2 or 3 touchdowns, if not. I'm not going to say more because 3 touchdowns is a lot. I'll give him two, maybe even 3 scores. Utah rolls 33-16. Holiday Bowl for Mortal Walk number 3. We got Minnesota versus Washington State. So for those of you who have been paying attention to the Pac-12 this year, Washington State was sort of like that team where you thought they could make a run for a Pac-12 North championship, and then you really didn't know because towards the last stretch of the end of the season, they had 2 big games, one against Colorado and one against Washington, their arch rival. They blew it in both games. They really didn't stand a chance in either game. Washington really exposed them with the passing attack with Austin Pettit. Austin Pettis, I think is his name, the wide receiver from Washington. And Colorado really exposed Washington's front 7 with running back Philip Lindsay running between the tackles, bowling over guys, running the ball to the outside. The kid did it all against them. And the rushing attack is the strength of Minnesota's offense, as it always is with those big boys in the Big Ten. Running back Rodney Smith, 15 touchdowns, 1,184 yards this season. He's definitely going to have a day. And, even if he doesn't go off, I think spellback Shannon Brooks, who's also got 700 yards rushing this season, he's going to get his fair share of touches as well. The line is probably going to be Minnesota by about 7.5, maybe 8 points. Definitely take Minnesota, even with the points. They're going to have a nice little trip out to San Diego for this Holiday Bowl. Washington State's going to hang around. They're going to score points, but I think Minnesota wears them down with the run game and takes control of the game late in the game, late in the fourth quarter. Wins by about 15, 16 points. Mortal Walk number 4. We're going to go with an upset here. Really isn't an upset when you think about it from a records perspective. Mississippi State versus Miami, Ohio in the St. Petersburg Bowl. Oh, what a lucky bunch of teams getting to go down to St. Petersburg. Oh, nope, never mind. You get to play in Crapacana Field. Anyway, Mississippi State is 5-7. They had a really, really strange season. They were able to somehow take down Texas A&M, but they found themselves in a 47-35 shootout against UMass, who's just, if they aren't the worst Division I team out there, they're close to it. There's not much the UMass is able to hang their hat on right now. Tough times for that program. They're trying to go D1, but Mississippi State went up to Foxborough, played UMass, and they found themselves in a shootout, which really is a concern for their defense. That was way earlier in the season. I think Mississippi State's defense has obviously improved a lot. They got thrashed by Alabama. They won the Egg Bowl against Mississippi to improve to 5-7, but now they're heading into their bowl game against Miami, Ohio, who's a mid-tier MAC team at 6-6. I don't think that Miami, Ohio is a good team by any stretch. They're just your average MAC team. They don't really play much defense. Their DBs aren't anything that's gonna lock down any type of any receiver in this matchup. But with that said, Mississippi State has struggled this year. They really, their worst moment, Mississippi State, was a 21-20 loss to FCS, to the FCS's South Alabama in week 1. Any team that loses to South Alabama, I'm not going to pick in my bowl pool. I'm definitely going to go with Miami, Ohio, and I guess you could consider this an upset when you consider the fact that it's a mid-tier MAC team going up against an SEC team. Records-wise, this isn't much of an upset, but the line is going to be in favor of Mississippi State despite their 5-7 record. I would take Miami, Ohio all day, every day. I don't care what the spread is. If Mississippi State is favored by more than a touchdown, I would take Mississippi State because I don't think Miami, Ohio, if they win, it's going to be that close. But Miami, Ohio should come out with this victory, I think. Mortal Lock number 5. This is the craziest story of the entire college football season, and it has nothing to do with any of the 4 playoff teams. Wake Forest versus Temple in the Military Bowl. Yeah, if anybody who's paid attention to the news this week around college football knows that Wake Forest had a pretty crazy scandal with one of their ex-players and now, just recently fired radio broadcasters Tommy Elrod leaking play calling information to opponents throughout the past 3 seasons. This story originally was Wake Forest having their game plan breached right before their game against Louisville 3 weeks back. That turned into an investigation by the athletic department, and it found that emails, texts, and phone calls were exchanged between Elrod and multiple athletic departments and teams and opposing coaches throughout the last 3 years. This guy, he pretty much, I'm not going to say he cost Wake Forest their season the last couple of years, but, it's definitely not a good look. They fired him from IMG. He's no longer the sports radio broadcaster for Wake Forest. This is a pretty crazy situation. And Temple right now, they're not a bad team. They're number 24 in the country. They're a pretty decent rushing attack. With all that's going on at Wake Forest, I'm not going to say it's going to completely take away from their bowl game, but it's definitely not the type of distraction this team wants heading into bowl season. Wake finished the season 6-6 with a pretty bad loss to BC on their resume in the last week of the season. They had ample opportunity to win that game, and they just choked it away. They're lucky they even made a bowl game, considering the fact that they really let go of their season down the stretch. If you're looking for a nice, easy win by the point, betting win by the points, I would take Temple over Wake Forest. I think Wake Forest is going to show up ready to play. They're ready to prove to the world that they're not just a bunch of schlacks that had their game plan breached and didn't even matter. They were going to go out and lose anyway. They want to show the world that they're a good team. But I think Temple's going to show up and they're going to expose them for their weak run defense. I think running backs Jahad Thomas and Rykel Armstead are going to get a lot of work in this game. Wake Forest really struggled this year against the likes of Dalvin Cook from Florida State and Wayne Gallman from Clemson. They really struggled against the run. I think Temple's going to run it down their throat. It's not going to be a pretty game, but I think Temple gets it done. I'm going to say 27-16. Now, let's move on from our mortal locks to the college football playoff. It's really hard for me to really even give Washington any sort of benefit in this game against Alabama. I think Alabama, the defending champ, they obviously benefit from the location of their game in Georgia or in Atlanta at the Georgia Dome. Washington's got to come across the country, and granted, it's a bowl game, so it's not really like that big of a disadvantage. They're going to be out there for a week, getting ready for the game, doing press conferences, taking pictures, all that crap. But Alabama's been here before. They've won the championship last year. They're the best. Nick Saban, he gets his guys prepared. Yes, Nick Saban has choked in bowl games before against like Utah in 2012. Not 2012, sorry, 2009. I believe they lost. Anyway, I think Alabama is gonna roll in this game, and when I say roll, I don't just mean win the game like 33-10. I think they're gonna put up at least. I think they're going to put up at least 45 points. Their defense, they're going to surrender some points to Washington, but it's not going to be anything that's going to raise any eyebrows. I think it's going to be like a 45-17, 45 maybe 20 game. I think Washington's going to show up ready to prove that they're a legitimate team and that the Pac-12 is a legitimate conference, but Washington has yet to play anywhere near the competition out in the Pac-12 this year as Alabama. Alabama's just a different breed right now. Tide rolls by 2, possibly even 3 scores. Take the points. I would probably take the under in this game. I think Alabama's going to cover their share of the over/under, but I don't believe Washington's able to crack that Alabama defense for more than maybe 2 or 3 scores, if that. Um, Again, 45-20, I believe, would be my prediction for this game. Over and under should be set at about 65 or 68.5. Clemson and Ohio State. Another team that's back to the playoff. Clemson, Deshaun Watson. It wasn't really pretty, but he found a way to get them to 11-1. They had a bad loss to Pittsburgh a couple weeks ago, but looking back, they actually turned into a decent team. James Conner, good to see that kid come back from cancer, and he had himself a hell of a season. They were able to go into Death Valley and take down Clemson. But you know what? Each team has a blunder. Every team in this playoff, except for Alabama, has a blemish on their resume. So I'm not going to really fault Clemson for that. Ohio State's one loss. They came at Penn State on a last-minute blocked kick that was returned for a touchdown. I think this is definitely going to be the 2 playoff games. I'm definitely most excited for this one out in the desert. So each team is going to bring a ton of fans out there. Clemson and Ohio State travel very well. It's going to be a great environment. If I had to pick a team, I'd say I'd go with Clemson just based off of their high-powered offense and their defense this year has had some holes in it, but I don't think Ohio State's offense is as good as people are giving it credit for. In that game versus Michigan, their defense bailed them out of that game. Their defense caused a couple turnovers, got them the ball in good field position. They also benefited from some pretty questionable calls. I think Ohio State comes in this game. They score some points on Clemson's defense, but I think Clemson is able to outscore them. I'm going to say Clemson 26, Ohio State 21. And I'm going to say Hunter Renfrow, the hero of last year's playoff, even if there is a hero for the runner-up, for the national runner-up, Clemson. Hunter Renfrow just came alive last year in the playoff. He was a beast. I expect Ohio State to definitely try to lock down the future first-round NFL draft pick, Mike Williams, on the outside. They're definitely going to put double coverage on him, make it impossible for Deshaun Watson to find him open down the field, which means Renfrow is going to get a lot of looks out of the slot. He's going to be running a lot of curl and a lot of drag routes. Expect him to get a lot of targets. I also think that JT Barrett is going to have himself a day, but I think Clemson's defense, with the month of preparation they have for this game, they're going to find a way to contain him. So again, Clemson 26, Ohio State 21 out in the desert, which means your matchup in Tampa for the college football playoff national championship is once again going to be Alabama versus Clemson. And while I think Clemson is certainly on a mission this year to get some revenge and get that championship that Dabo Swinney praises so much about and wants so dearly, I don't think it comes against this Alabama team. Yeah, different quarterback. Yeah, different system. Yeah, different defense. But Alabama's just a different breed, man. You find me a flaw in that team, and I'll try to find a reason to pick Clemson. But right now, I think Alabama is just too good. I think Alabama goes down to Tampa and takes care of business, whether it's Ohio State or Clemson. I think it's going to be Clemson. I think Bama takes care of business 36-26 over Clemson. And that is your college football playoff preview. And that is your Gambler's Delight College Football Playoff Degenerate podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. Happy bowl season. We'll talk to you soon.